Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We're really excited to get started. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes just to kind of let some people trickle in if we have any latecomers, but we will get started in just a minute or two here. So thanks so much for joining.
Hey, everybody. Great to have you guys here. Happy to be here as well as answer any questions on webinars.
All righty. So let's get going here. We'll get started, and if anyone else wants to join in, they'll kind of join in during the intro. So just to get started, my name is Chloe. I am the Customer Support Director over at Excel Events. And so today we wanted to really just kind of bring everyone here. We know that a lot of you, whether you are already putting in work on an in-person fundraiser that may have been canceled, or if you are just interested in learning about online fundraising, we're excited to have you joining us today because online fundraising can be a really great option to bring people together when we are all socially isolating. And we wanted to provide just an introduction to that for those who may not be as familiar with the online fundraising space. Just to tell you a little bit about who Excel Events is, we were founded in Boston in 2014 with the goal of helping to raise more money for the charitable causes that you care about. We've designed a platform that makes it really easy for hosts to set up and manage fundraisers and for guests to participate in them. While we've worked with some of the largest nonprofit organizations in the world, a majority of our clients are small and medium organizations, like most of yours are. We know that not everyone has unlimited funding and that due to recent events, it's a lot more important than ever for your organizations to bring in donations. So we wanted to put together this webinar just to get you pointed in the right direction to continue your fundraising efforts. To host today, we have John Kazarian, who's the founder and CEO of Excel Events. And then we also have Omar Zenham, who is the founder and CEO of Webinar Ninja. And with that, I will turn it over to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chloe. We are excited to have everyone here today. Omar and I were just chatting about how I missed the haircut I had in that picture. It's been a while now since I've been able to get to a barber. So hopefully that will go away soon. But in the meantime, let's focus on how we can think about virtual events. So for the agenda today, we'll start off by talking about what a virtual event actually is. From there, we'll talk about if it's worth it for us. What's the ROI on this pivot to virtual? And then if we choose to make that pivot, we're going to have to think about what tech stack we want to use to implement our virtual fundraiser. From there, we'll talk about the setup and organization process, as well as promotion, both pre-event and during the event. We'll follow that up with some best practices. At what point we'll hand it over to Omar, and he can help us understand best practices for hosting an online virtual event and wrap it up with some questions. I can see that quite a few of you have already found the chat panel on the side of your screen. So if anyone does have questions throughout the presentation, please do go ahead and ask. Chloe's going to be fielding questions throughout the presentation, and Omar and I will do our best to jump in there and answer any other questions that we see come up throughout as well. So let's start by talking about what a virtual event is. I know this is a concept that we started hearing about quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, but it's actually been around for quite a while. So a virtual event can span a number of different angles. We could have a purely online campaign. It could be a email call to donate or a text to give campaign. It could be a peer-to-peer campaign or an online auction or a raffle. But just because it's online does not mean that there can't be a live component of this event. And there's actually quite a few benefits of incorporating a live component into your virtual event. But when determining whether or not you want to do that, the first thing you need to do is understand the goal of your event. And one thing that I think is getting lost right now when it comes to our donor base is that a lot of donors don't realize that as a nonprofit organization, our goal is not to sit on a boatload of cash. It's to take the cash and put it to work for the mission that we're focused on. By having a live component to our event, we can get people's attention and communicate to them the importance of continuing to fund our organization and our project. The other thing that we can do is start to retell our story and re-engage our audience. People have been getting bombarded with emails, both marketing, but also fundraising emails right now. And we don't want to get lost in the shuffle. So if we can get people's attention, then we can help to tell our story. On the fundraising side of things, there's also some other ways that we can capture people's emotions and an effort to get them to further their donations to our organization. So another question that we see come up often when people are thinking about the transition to an online or a virtual fundraiser is, do I have enough time? Now, when thinking about this question, there's a lot of organizations that are in the process right now of postponing or even canceling their events. And if you're thinking that you need to postpone your event and deciding whether or not it makes sense to transition to virtual, I want you to know that you can do this in a matter of days. Just thinking about this webinar that we're hosting today, we conceptualized this 9 days ago, partnered with Omar and his team to put it together, launched the email the next day, and now we've got a couple hundred people who are registered and attending today, just in the matter of a week and 1 or 2 emails sent out. You can do the same thing. This is just a sample of a short-term timeline that you could use to implement a transition from an in-person event to a virtual event. If, on the other hand, you have an event slated for maybe later this month or later this year, and you're thinking about setting that event up purely as a virtual event, you're going to have a little bit more time to execute your plan, but you can certainly put that to your advantage and do even more with that. And we're going to talk about the auction component, auction and raffle component of this a little bit further in depth and some of the timelines around collecting items as well in a moment. So the other question that we see people asking quite a bit is it worth it? And when it comes to this idea of a virtual event, a lot of people think this is something that just spun up in the past 3 or 4 weeks as we all got stuck at home. But the reality is that this is something that we've been doing for a number of years, particularly so in the fall. We see that hurricane season leads to a lot of event cancellations for one reason or another. Venues get flooded, there's power outages, you name it. The natural disasters often lead to a great reason to host a virtual event. And there's a lot of other reasons that can get in the way of an in-person event as well. But when we work with these organizations and they transition to virtual, they're often shocked by how much money they're able to raise and how low they're able to keep their costs. We actually just worked with an organization a couple of weeks ago that had to make the migration, and they were shocked, again, at how easy it is. If you think about what goes into hosting an in-person event, we have catering costs, venues, security, staffing, photographer, videographer, photo booth, you name it. All of those costs you don't have to worry about. The only costs you really need to think about are going to be your tech stack and your promotion. And even in the realm of the technology that you might use for hosting an in-person event, your AV costs are out the window, except maybe buying a nicer microphone, and Omar might speak to that. But you don't have any other AV costs. And when it comes to the tech stack you're going to use, chances are you're going to use a mobile bidding platform anyway, so you don't even need to worry about that, or staffing for your mobile bidding program. If you were to move forward with a software platform like Excel Events, for example, your upfront cost to go ahead and run an online auction is $99. So it's quite affordable to move forward with that. The other aspect of it is, again, building that donor base and that connection with your donors. We can spread the availability of who can attend our event geographically. Everyone doesn't have to be in the same city or town to attend that event. And we can also help to retell our story and re-engage our audience. So where do we get started? Well, the first piece of this is going to be picking our tech stack. And this goes back to that question of what's your goal? If you're hosting a virtual event, a part of your goal needs to be to tell that story, and face-to-face human interaction is a great way to do that. So picking a tech stack where you're going to be able to get in front of your people, you're going to be able to engage them through some sort of interactive component like the chat you're seeing on the side of your screen here. This is a really good way to keep people engaged throughout your event. There's a number of ways you can structure it. Some people do it as a actual gala where people are getting dressed up even in their homes. We've also seen events that have transitioned from a in-person event where people have already purchased tickets, and instead of spending all of that money on catering, they went ahead and they issued a $30 Uber Eats gift card to all of their attendees, and they were able to spend Friday night, order in instead of cooking, and then attend this virtual event. But in terms of the tech stack that you need, a couple of things to look at. I didn't even mention security because that should be a given. You know, they have to have that little lock symbol at the top of the page. Any payment processing needs to be PCI compliant. Also, along the lines of payment processing, make sure that you're going to get paid out quickly. Right now, nobody can go to the post office and mail a check. It needs to be credit card or debit card payments, and you need that money to come into your organization immediately. Obviously, cash flow is incredibly important for organizations right now, so make sure you're going to get paid out quickly. Another aspect of it is ease of use. If you're getting stuck just in the initial onboarding part of the process, it's probably not the right tool. It's 2020. Technology should be easy to use, and you can find a tool out there that's going to make everything very easy for you to execute on. The other aspect of it is scalability. You want to make sure that if you get a high load of people maybe bidding in the last couple of minutes on an auction item or signing up for your event, you have nothing to worry about when it comes to being able to handle that load. So it's all coming down to just making sure that the platform that you pick is going to fit your needs. Another big part of that is the customer support side of things, Chloe's realm. Even if it's a virtual event, it's probably going to be on a weekend or in the evening because people are obviously working during the day. You need to make sure that the support team for the products you're using is going to be available to you in your evening or weekend to make sure that they can help you out should you have any questions during those final few minutes of your fundraising campaign when those donations are critical. So here are just a couple examples of what an online auction platform might look like. I'm going to focus the next couple of slides on an auction for a couple of reasons. I think this is a super relevant topic right now, or a way of fundraising for a few different reasons. But particularly so because not only do people want to help your organization right now, but they also want to help their local community. And there's a lot of ways that you can get your donor base to do both of those things at the same time. For example, I live here in Boston. There's a couple of restaurants that I frequent. I know the staff that works there just because I go there. And I bought gift cards for those restaurants to help support them through this period of time. But at the same time, there's also a number of nonprofit organizations that I'm partial to, like the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute here in Boston. And if somebody from Dana-Farber reached out to me and said, hey, are you going to be attending this virtual event? Do you want to help support us? I'd be very inclined to donate some of those gift cards to that virtual auction. And that's something you can even suggest to your donor base or your committee, your closer donors, as a way for them to really kill two birds with one stone. I'll talk about auctions a little bit further, but one other thing that you can think about when it comes to hosting a virtual auction is, do you actually want to sell tickets to the virtual auction? Because that's another way that you can generate some ancillary revenue. So here you can see an online auction where people can browse different items, read descriptions of the items. You can have little videos about the items, and I'll make some further suggestions on that in a bit. But one of the things that I think is the most important attribute of an auction platform is text message outbid notifications. And the reason for that is at the end of the day, your auction makes money because people outbid each other. We know that. But we also suggest that you run your auction for 7 to 10 days. People aren't sitting in front of their computer waiting to get outbid for 7 or 10 days. So by using a text message outbid notification, people can simply reply to that text message when they get notified that they've been outbid and drive the price up and get into bidding wars. This is a really easy tool to increase the price of those items. So when you're picking a platform, make sure that that is available to you. So let's talk about the item collection process. Now, if you're transitioning from an in-person event to a virtual event, chances are you've already collected a bunch of items. But we just talked about another way that we can also get some additional items by tapping our committee and our closer donors to ask them if they want to contribute something. Maybe it's a week at their summer home, or maybe with travel prices being so low right now, you want to build your own travel packages. So when it comes to collecting items, what we generally suggest is putting an item committee together. So these are the people who are going to package the smaller items together. They're going to organize everything. They're going to collect the photos, upload them online. You can use your online auction platform to keep track of this, or maybe Google Sheets. Another thing that works really well is categorizing the items. It makes people who are interested in a particular category easy to find those different types of items. The other thing we want to do when it comes to building out our event website is make sure that we stay in touch with our branding. So branding is incredibly important to nonprofit organizations, and the platform that you go with should make it very easy for you to stay on brand, uploading your own logos and color palettes, telling your story on that page, incorporating video, and everything else along those lines. The other thing that's really important to do is thank your donors. So if somebody does do something like donate a week at their summer house, thank them. Or if it's a local business, thank them. That goes a long way. You can also link back to their websites. Just a couple final tips here on pricing of items. This is a question that we see come up quite frequently, so I wanted to touch upon it. When it comes to pricing items, we suggest that you start low. We see the 25 to 35% of the item fair value working really well, and setting a bid increment around 5 to 10% of that fair market value. So if it was a $100 item, we'd suggest starting at around $30 and then setting a bid increment of $5 to $10. That way it's not such a significant bid increment that people don't really want to take that next step. But at $30, they're in the door, they're rolling, they're getting those text message outbid notifications, and they're driving that price right up. The other thing that you can do is take advantage of a buy it now option. So for example, if you have an item that's maybe dinner with the principal, where the principal's offered to have dinner with 5 different families, you can add that in there, and maybe it's $150 to have dinner with the principal, and 5 different people or families can go ahead and purchase that item. So now let's talk about the communication process when it comes to promoting our event and alerting our participants. Again, I want to go back to the idea of putting this in your own context. Are you transitioning from an in-person event to a virtual event, or are you launching a virtual event from scratch? If you are transitioning, make sure to start early. As soon as you've made that decision, communicate it to your attendees. I'll touch upon the topic of postponing versus canceling events as well, since we've seen a lot of questions around that. What we've seen most organizations do right now is postpone their event. We've seen very few cancellations. The only time we've seen cancellations is because there's a venue or an artist that's the highlight of the event, and there's not going to be another opportunity for that. But organizations are trying to get ahead of the gun here and scheduling new venues so they can go ahead and postpone, and they're encouraging their donor base to wait until the new date has been set before requesting a refund. I know that there's some ticketing platforms out there. I think Live Nation is one where they're not issuing refunds on tickets until the new date is set. I know that with Excel events, we're offering refunds immediately. Well, obviously at the discretion of the event organizer, but we're not holding the money back. The decision's obviously up to you, but cash is tight for all organizations. So if you can postpone and wait to issue the refund, that is what we're seeing as common practice. So once you've decided if you're going to postpone or switch to virtual, then let everyone know. Email them, post on social media, get people to share those posts. You can attract some new donors to the virtual event, and also give your donors a call. If your staff is at home, I'm sure they've got plenty on their plate prepping for other events, but if you can get them to find a couple minutes and give your donors, especially the bigger donors, a call, it only takes a minute or two, or just leave them a voicemail, but that personal touch goes a long way. Other ways that we can promote our events, sharing the page, obviously on Facebook, Instagram, other social media channels. I want to touch upon one particular strategy that works really well for this event that we host here in Boston called the Fall Formal. This is a 1,000-person event. We're going into the 7th year of it now, but what works really well for us is we take our committee of 14 people, obviously invite them to Facebook first. We ask them to invite their first-degree connections, the people they know are 90% or more likely to attend the event. And then once those people are in the door and accepted on Facebook, we then encourage them to invite their friends. That first-degree invite goes a really long way for a couple of factors. One, it's obviously more personal. I'm more likely to go if a close friend invites me to an event, whether it be an in-person event or a virtual event. But the other aspect of it is that on Facebook, where you can see how many people are attending, how many are invited, it's just a better look if there are 500 people that are invited and 300 that are attending versus seeing only 10 people attending out of the 2,000 that have been invited. It just makes it seem like a much more engaging event. Now, you can also use this to share your items on Facebook, both posting great imagery of those items as well as short video clips. And you can also engage your donor base by asking them to make little videos. If they're maybe offering up their summer house, I keep using that example, or maybe a travel package, have them make a 30-second video and have them make it fun. Get dressed up. People are bored, they're home. So this is a great way that you can engage your donor base. And you can also use those videos for the live auction component through your live streaming platform. And then the other thing that you can encourage people to do is if there's an item that they know a friend is going to really like, maybe it's that travel package to the destination they've always wanted to go to, encourage your donor base to share it out with their friends. Here are a couple examples of an email campaign we saw. This was, I thought this was a really well executed campaign. I know it had tremendous results as well. Right off the bat, you can see that they've created a sense of urgency by sticking a countdown timer right into the email. And depending on the email marketing platform that you're using, you can do this as well. They've also gone ahead and they've highlighted some of their best items right in the body of the email with bid buttons right here. So people can view an item they like the Masters, and click to bid without having to do any other work. It brings them right to the auction page. And you can see the great imagery going along with it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Omar to talk to us about some best practices for preparing for the virtual event.
Awesome. Great to have everybody here and be a part of this webinar. For those who don't know, I'm Omar Zenhom, the co-founder and CEO of Webinar Ninja. The first thing I want you all to do right now is to open up something that you can take down some notes. I'm going to be giving you a ton of information, and I want you to get the most out of it. So if you have a note-taking app, you have a notebook next to you, just jot some things down. I guarantee that you'll find this useful, so I want you to be as engaged as possible. Also, keep your hands on the keyboard because I'm going to be asking you some questions. We're going to go back and forth in the chat to make sure we keep this as interactive as possible. It's good to see you, Chloe. Awesome. All right. So let's start about preparing for this live event. If you're going to run a live event, a live webinar, you're going to need some gear and you're going to need some software, hardware and software. I'm going to give you basically the shopping list you're going to need. And it's actually pretty short. Okay, so if you have a laptop with a webcam, you're pretty good to go. Okay, all you really need is a webcam and you need a mic. Okay, and most headphones will have built-in mics that you can have hook up with your mic in there. And this is the basic setup in terms of hardware. Okay, if you want to go a little bit pro, if you want to have a better camera, if you want to have better audio quality, there are two pieces of equipment I would recommend you buy from Amazon. The first one is your mic. No, not the webcam. Actually, your mic is probably more important than the webcam, because great audio is more important actually, because bad audio is hard to ignore. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you grab what I call, this is the Audio Technica ATR 2100. Okay, I will pop that in the chat in a moment. So it's the Audio Technica ATR 2100. It's about 70, 80 bucks on Amazon, depending on sale prices. It's a USB mic, so it plugs right into your computer, and the sound quality is fantastic. Okay. Number two, if you want to go pro with your webcam, there is a great webcam by Logitech called the Logitech C920. Okay, this is about 80 bucks as well. It's also USB, and you can plug it right into your laptop or your computer, your desktop. If you want to go like super pro, like my camera is a Logitech Brio. It's about $150. It's probably more than you need, but I do over 500 webinars, so I get a lot of mileage on my webcam. So that's another recommendation. Now, when it comes to software, there's a lot of different options out there when it comes to running live events, live webinars. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm the co-founder of this software, Webinar Ninja, that we're on today. And I'll give you a quick demo to show you kind of how you can prepare your webinar, how easy it is. A lot of people worry a lot about the tech of running a live event, but actually the most important stuff, the hard part, is what Jonathan's talking about, and what Chloe are here for. They're talking about, hey, let's make sure that you actually have great content, a great auction, a great event. The actual creation of the webinar is actually quite easy. I'm going to share my screen a bit and show you how easy it is to create a webinar and the parts that you need to make it happen. Okay. And I'll also talk about a little bit about how you can market your webinar. All right. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. And then you can, if you guys can just go full screen on this, and we'll go back to it, or maybe just make it the main screen. I'm going to allow my share screen. Yeah. Okay. So if you can just maximize that that share screen, the share screen window. Yeah, you can minimize the slides, and then you can just hover over the share screen window and just go big window. Yeah, we're at the bottom. If you could just double click on the share screen, that'd be that window, that'd be perfect. Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah, here you go. Here you go, baller. All right. So now I'm sharing my screen. I'm inside my account inside of Webinar Ninja. I'm going to create a really easy webinar, really just like typical live webinar to make things easy. And we're going to just make it a very basic webinar just so we can show you the demo. So with Webinar Ninja, you have a few options if you want to run a webinar. You can run a live webinar, an automated webinar. You can run a series webinar. You can run a hybrid webinar. We have a lot of different options here, okay? But for the point of today's demo, or this just example, I just want to create a live webinar, very easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a title. Let's say, fundraising event. Okay, and I can add co-hosts here if I like. Automatically, they get an email telling them how to join, and they get added to the registration page. I can then just choose the date, and then the time, and then I'm good to go. Okay, so say for example I want to do it at like 11 a.m. for 1 hour on April 15th. And every webinar I choose, I can make it free or paid. We have a Stripe integration, so if you want to charge admission, you can. If you want to you make it free and then raise money on the event, that's also an option. So I'm going to hit create webinar. Now, many people are expecting to say, okay, that's step 1 of 10, right? What's step 2? That's it. You're done. Webinar is created. We've really made it easy for you to create webinars. Everything is created for you. Registration page, thank you page. That's the page they see after they register. The email notification reminders they get. This is all built in and already done. But if you ever want to edit any of these things, modify any of these things, customize these things with your own brand, your own logo, your own colors, you can go ahead and do that. And then what's great about this is that you can then save it and use this template for all your future webinars, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and recreate this over and over. So this is just my default registration page template, but I can change the image background to make it my own image. I can use either images that we provide to you, stock photos that you can use, royalty-free photos, or I can use my own images that I've uploaded, so I can be able to do that. Say, for example, I'm doing sort of charity basketball game, and I'm selling tickets to this game because we're going to have a few people that will be playing in the community, and I'm going to upload that image, and I can add my logo or move this logo. I can change the title, and as you can see, it says webinar title as a shortcut. Now we do this just so that you can use this template over and over, and what's great about it is that you don't have to worry about making any typos or anything like that. When I preview the template, it will just show exactly the name of the event, and I can modify any aspect of this template, which is the page that people go on to register. And we have these templates for every different kinds of templates, long form templates, short form templates. You can add video, you can add images, all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't want to save, I'm good to go. And you can also edit, things like your email notifications. These are the emails that go out to remind people about the webinar, to confirm, hey, this is when the webinar is, this is the date and the time and the link you have to go to. So all this stuff gets emailed automatically within our system. So you don't need to, add another piece of the puzzle. The reason why we created Webinar Ninja is just so that you don't have all these moving parts. It's just one place for you to run your live events, recorded events, any kind of event you want to run with our system. So if I want to open any of these email templates, I can, and I can modify them. I can customize them to my own liking, my own copy. Again, you can save them as default, so you don't have to rewrite them over and over again in the future. So I just wanted to give you a quick demo of how easy it is to create a webinar. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. So the software aspect of it is pretty simple. Once you have your event together, all you do is just go live and start broadcast, just like we did today. Okay, I'm good to go, Jonathan. You can stop sharing screen, and I'll move on to the next slide. Stop sharing screen, and yep, you can just move to the next slide. Cool. Yeah, I think you just maximize your video, so you can just minimize your video, John. There you go, we're back in there. You can just double click on the slides and they'll, yep, there you go. All good. Yep, there we go. So one of the things I want to teach you guys today in terms of presenting on a webinar is what we call the Tokyo method, okay? This is actually a photo of me and my wife, Nicole. She's also my co-founder. She's the COO of Webinar Ninja. We were in Tokyo recently, actually. In fact, we were in quarantine here in Australia for 14 days because we came from overseas. Today is actually day 15. I get to walk in the park today. I can't wait. I'm going to show you something called the Tokyo method. It's an acronym to show you exactly how to present and provide a great experience for people on a webinar. Okay, so next slide, please. The first T, the first letter of Tokyo is T, which stands for topic. So your topic is your promise. Okay, I want to say that again. Whatever your topic is of your webinar, it's your promise. That title that you give, it's what people are expecting when they hit that webinar, okay? Now be very, very careful about how you choose your topic, because if your topic is not specific, if you're not going to deliver on that topic, if you're not able to cover what you want to cover in that topic or cover in that event in that 60-minute allotment or an hour and a half, then you need to refine that, because you want to make sure that you earn the trust of your audience. Even if you're running an online event, an online auction, not everybody's going to participate, or not everybody's going to bid or be a part and maybe participate financially. But you want to build trust with everybody in the audience. That way, the next time you run an event, they come back. They feel like, yes, you delivered, you were engaging, and you actually delivered on what you promised, okay? So the first thing you need is to set a topic. What's the title? And one of the best things you can do is maybe in your community as a first webinar before you run a fundraiser is to run a Q&A webinar with your patrons, with the people that you work with, the people that you normally show up to your events. And maybe they have questions about the organizations you're raising for or things like that. And then you can get a lot of great ideas and topics from that Q&A webinar. All right, the next one is O. Let's move on to the next slide, which is outline, okay? Outline is basically, you're going to outline how you're going to deliver on that topic. How you're going to deliver your event. Basically, you want to make sure that you have just like you would outline an essay when you were back in grade school, you do the same thing with your webinar. And it's better to outline this either in a Google Doc or even a piece of paper, just so you have an overview of what you want to cover and how the flow of your webinar is going to be, okay? How are you going to be able to deliver the different aspects of it? Just like today in our webinar, we wanted to kind of present the different options you have. I jumped in, so I'm part of this outline somewhere. So you want to have that outline written out so you have some reference to go with, okay? Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we have topic, outline, and K stands for Keynote, which is basically your presentation slides. Excuse me, these slides that you have in front of us right now, okay? So these slides are basically a visual aid for your audience so they can follow along with your presentation, okay? We were on camera for a bit, now we were sharing a screen, and now we're using slides. We're using slides throughout, but this allows us to have more of a dynamic and engaging practice here with everybody on the webinar, okay? So you're going to take your outline and you're going to move it into a keynote. So basically, you're going to take each point of that outline and you're going to make them into slides, okay? So what I like to say in terms of the keynote is to have a format that is clear and not confusing for your audience. Just like we had today where we had sort of like a menu of what's going to happen today at the start. It's good to give people a little bit of transparency and let them know, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's a lot easier to get people to be engaged and to pay attention if they know what's going on, what's about to happen, what to expect. So having a menu at the start, having like, hey, this is what we're going to be covering, going through each slide, having some time for Q&A at the end if you have Q&A, and also make sure that you are transparent about, if you're going to be asking for money, if you are going to be making an offer or an auction or something like that, that you mention that early on as much as possible so people understand what's happening. Okay, next slide. So we have topic, outline, keynote, and the Y stands for your engagement, okay? As much as possible, you want to engage with your audience, okay? Why? Because the more you're engaged, the more you're going to get out of the audience, the more you're going to be able to get out of them, okay? So for example, one of the things I want to show you is that we're going to do this on the chat right now. You and I, we're going to engage together, okay? Is you want to do an activity or a strategy we call input-output. For those who don't know, I was an educator for over 13 years. I was a high school and university teacher. So this is like the bread and butter of teachers. So this is something that you're going to use on your webinars every single time. So as you go through your content, as you go through your slides, it's good to check in with your audience. So I'm going to check in with you right now and say, all right, right now, I want you in the chat to tell me out of these first four, topic, outline, keynote, your engagement, which one do you feel is like your biggest aha moment? Which one are you going to work on first? Okay, you're going to work on them all, but which one do you find is something that you need to work on first, right? So we got Jacqueline saying outline, we got Bill saying engagement, Matthew says keynote, Stephanie says outline, Glenn says engagement with the audience, not just talk, right? So as you can see, there's a lot of engagement. I'm asking you to engage with me. I have to prompt you, okay? I love it. Outline, keynote, Paul says engagement, Aaron says engagement. So the point here is that I can't expect people to just be engaged. A lot of people will run webinars and be like, oh, it was good and everything, we had a good attendance, but it was a little bit dead in the chat. Okay, so so what did you do? Did you ask any questions? Did you ask them to engage with you, right? Did you even give them even a softball question? Serious, here's a softball question for everybody in the chat, okay? Are you a dog person or are you a cat person? Let me know in the chat, dog or cat. I know this is silly, but this is just an example, okay? I could start with a softball question like this. What's your favorite ice cream? Whatever. But the point here is that I have to train my audience to engage. I can't just expect them to engage. Why would you engage if you had no questions, right? If you had nothing to engage with, right? I love it. You neither, both, dog, cat. I love it, guys. So the point here is that you need to be mindful of your engagement. So what I encourage you to do is called the minute of power. At the start of every minute, is it real engagement? Rebecca asks, that's a good question. So the first, in the beginning, when I ask, I'm going to go through my minute of power, and then I'll answer that question through the explanation, Rebecca. And if you have any other questions, let me know. So the minute of power, the point here is that you want to create a sense of engagement from the start, an expectation. And you don't want to start with questions that are going to rack their brains. That's too hard. It's okay to ask a softball question just so they get familiar with how to engage, where to type in the chat, what it looks like when other people chat, right? Just to encourage them. So what I like to do at the start of every webinar is I say, hey, I'm Omar Zen, I'm the co-founder, CEO of Webinar Ninja. The first thing I want you to do is introduce yourself in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what would be a win for you today. Okay, this is a big question, but it basically answers, hey, why did you show up here? Why are you here on this webinar? What are you looking to gain, right? More about how to moderate the answers. Yeah, great, Rebecca. I'll make sure to address that. So as people are going to engage with that first question I asked, let me know, or first two questions. Where are you tuning in from today, and why did you join today's webinar, or what would be a win for you today? As they answer in the chat, I'm going to go through and I say, okay, John, you're from New York. Whereabouts in New York? I used to live in the West Village, right? I don't just say, hey, we got John from New York, and I try to engage as much as possible just to start and break the ice. And I add a little context. Oh, I see, Madeline, you're from Virginia. Virginia, my sister and my mom live in Virginia. Whereabouts? We're in Northern Virginia. And I just give them another softball question just to get them engaged. This is just going to take you about a minute or two at the start as people start to come in. And then as I go through the content, I'm going to start engaging them just like I did. I check in with people. Hey, did that make sense to you? Do you agree with me? Should we keep going, or do you have any questions? And people say keep going, or thumbs up, or something like that. The point here is that every 5 to 10 minutes, I want to check in with my people in the chat, throw them a question, throw them a poll, something to engage with. And when I go back into the chat, I don't have to answer every single person, but I do have to engage with some people. Okay, I do need to engage with some people to make sure people know that there is a chance I'm going to call on you. All right, so we have topic, outline, keynote, your engagement. The last one is offer. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So offer is basically your what call to action you have here. So whether it's bidding on an auction, whether that is you're making an offer for a fundraiser, you're making an offer for yourself, maybe the call to action is to attend another webinar, whatever it is, you need to make sure you make some sort of offer at the end. Sometimes it's just, download something, whatever it is. But the point here is that you need to be very clear on, one, what the offer is, what the return on investment on that offer, what you're going to gain, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's any kind of aspect of return on investment on this offer. The next thing that you want to make sure is that you show them what happens when you actually take on this offer. Okay, so whether it's a case study that happened in the past, whether it's some pictures of people that enjoyed the benefits of donating last year, look at these people that participated in this charity basketball game. They got to play basketball with, Aziz Ansari, whatever it was, right? The point here is that you show them the reality of what happens after you take on the offer, okay? Lastly, you make sure you show them exactly how to do it. Okay, a lot of them say, okay, here's my offer, that's it. Whether you offer an offer link, whether you offer some sort of button, that we have an offer button inside of Webinar Ninja. The point is that you have to direct them to, hey, if you want to take action, you want to take the next step, here's how to do it. A lot of people, they forget the step, you just don't show them. And you can even show them some pictures on a slide, say, hey, when you click this button, this is the screen you're going to see, this is the next thing you're going to see, all that kind of stuff. So we have Tokyo method, topic, outline, keynote, your engagement, your offer, okay? Let me know in the chat right now, did you find the Tokyo method helpful? Have you written down notes? Do you find that it was something that you can take on in your next event? By the way, This is something that you can use even in an in-person event. This is not going to last forever, this whole COVID-19 thing. You can use this in a real live event. You can use this on a live event, on a webinar, whatever you'd like. All right, I think I have one more slide. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so we talked about the minute of power a bit. I jumped ahead, input, output, and fielding questions. So one of the things I want to talk about is fielding questions. You should definitely have dedicated times to answering any questions, whether it's the end of the webinar, in the middle of the webinar. Some people do part A, part B. But the point here is that make sure you address how to ask questions and when your questions will be answered. So in Webinar Ninja, you'll see below the video that there's a questions area, and people can ask questions. Like Bill has a question here. And you can tell the people at the start, hey, if you have questions right now during my presentation, after I'm finished, pop them in the questions area below the video. I'll make sure to find them. Why? Because we like to separate the questions from the chat. That way it's easy for you to find the questions when it's time for Q&A. And you may want to do a Q&A 50% through the presentation and then one at the end, or you can bundle it all at the end. That's up to you. Okay, so where is the question box? The question box is below the video. So you have 3 tabs: questions, polls, offers, and you can go ahead and ask a question. Great, guys. I think that's my slides. Let me know if I'm good to go. I just want to quickly say, I don't know if I hadn't discussed this with Jonathan, but Jonathan and I were kind of discussing, is there anything we could do for this audience those who want to get started with webinars? If you want to get started with Webinar Ninja, we're actually running something to help people out during COVID-19. It's a promo code called Beat COVID. Nicole will put in the link, webinarninja.com, and that's the code Beat COVID, and you'll get 20% off any plan, whether your first month or your first year, depending on what you like to do. So if you are looking to do webinars in the long run, feel free to do that for the year, and you'll get 20% for the annual. This is just something that we're trying to do to help people out. If you happen to be in the healthcare industry, if you are part of first responders that's going on, you can contact support at webinarninja.com. We are actually giving people that are in the healthcare industry or first responders free access to support them, because they're the heroes of our day today. So we want to make sure that we support them. So thank you so much, guys. I hope this was useful. If it was, let me know in the chat. And of course, you can reach out to us at any time at support@webinarninja.com. Jonathan, I think that you want to maybe just minimize the slides, and your camera's probably muted right now. There you go. Oh,
you hear me now?
There we go, John.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so a couple of really interesting questions popped up over the past few minutes. One of which actually falls perfectly in line with this next slide, which is the live component of your auction. So a few different things to keep in mind there. The question is around how long we can keep people's attention for. What we generally suggest in terms of a sort of order of operations, open up your silent auction 7 to 10 days in advance of the event, whether virtual or in person. Do your pledge, so your call to action where you're asking people to donate, telling the mission of your organization again, really selling them on the importance of what you're doing and pulling at the heartstrings there. Do that before the live auction, and then follow it up with the live auction. Try to keep your live auction items capped at 12. And this is another great opportunity to use those little videos to go ahead and engage your donor base. So 15 to 45 seconds is great for these little videos that are promoting the different items and really selling those items, so we can drive up the proceeds in bidding for those items. There also, I wanted to touch upon Rebecca's question, because I thought that was a great question. It kind of spans a couple of different areas, but in terms of engagement, we can also use polls and this chat to do things like ask our donor base, do they know where the money that they're using is going? We could take a poll of our audience and see, of these 4 different areas that our nonprofit focuses on, what do you think the split is in terms of personnel, in terms of cash that's being allocated to those different organizations? Or how big of an impact did we make last year? How many lives did we impact? All of that stuff is a great way to engage your audience while also reminding them of your mission. And then going back to the topic of doing a live ask, this is an example of a page that you could share on your screen during that live ask. People can make donations from their phone, from their computer, while you're in your virtual session. And you can display people's names on the screen as they're making those donations, show the progress towards your goal. The other thing that's super important is to make sure you call out the people who make big contributions. They want their name on the screen. They want their name to be said out loud. They want to hear that. And that gets other people riled up to do the same thing. So take advantage of that opportunity. So wrapping up here, a couple of other important things in mind. If you are doing an auction or raffle, obviously in this tricky time, the distribution of items to your donor base is going to be challenging. So make sure you communicate when people should expect to receive those items, whether it be in the mail or digitally, whatever it might be. Also make sure that everybody knows the checkout process so that you can get that cash in hand as quickly as possible so that you can go ahead and put that money to work. And again, remind people that as nonprofit organizations, you're not sitting on a boatload of cash. Your job is to make a difference, and that means you got to put that money to work. So just to wrap up in conclusion, it's super easy to host an online fundraiser. You can get started in a day. We're here to help. Omar's team is here to help. Let us know what we can do. Make sure when you're picking your tech stack and your partner, you're looking at them not just as a product, but as a partner with the support you need to make sure that your virtual event and fundraising campaign is going to be a success. And use this opportunity as a way to remind people of your mission, remind them why it is that you do what you do, the impact it makes for people, and what's going to happen if nothing is done in times like this. I know that Omar already touched upon the discount that they're offering for their platform. Excel Events is doing the same thing. We're offering $20 off of the activation fee to set up an auction or a raffle or fund a need campaign. If you're interested in taking advantage of that, just shoot us a message. We've got a live chat on our website, similar to what you're seeing on the side of the screen right now. Again, we're here to help. We appreciate everyone who joined us today. And if anyone does have further questions, feel free to reach out to us and let us know how we can help you out. Thank you, everyone. Oh, actually, one other point. We are doing a demonstration of our online auction and raffle platform tomorrow at the same time. There is a link available to that on our website, but Chloe will also go ahead and send out that link to everyone who joined today if anybody's interested in joining that.
I will include.
Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow as well.
I will include the discount codes with that as well, just so that way you do have them as a reminder.
And one other point actually that just came up in a question. Somebody asked how to handle replacing golf fundraisers, since those obviously aren't happening right now. I personally not a gamer, but I can tell you that esports are a huge trend these days. They're becoming a bigger and bigger deal, especially now when people are locked at their houses. I know somebody in the chat said that you can't find a webcam in a Best Buy. You definitely can't find an Xbox right now. There's a lot of ways that you can use to run a virtual fundraiser as well. You can have March Madness of esports and have people buy into that fundraiser. You can even put the kids to playing the games, and you're just there to sponsor them, sponsor your virtual team, whether it be something like Madden or one of the other games that are out there. There's a couple of other questions that are still trickling in here. Facebook polls, are they useful? Yeah, I mean, anything that you can do to engage your audience is always a win. It looks like there might be a few other questions, but just for the sake of time, we'll address those directly to the people who have asked. And if anyone else does have last-minute questions, just let us know. With that, we are going to conclude, and thank you again to everybody who joined us today.